So talk to me about dreams.
Well, I've been working with dreams, my own dreams, for over 40 years. And what attracts me about them or what gets my attention is that just like in waking life, dreams are a way that we reflect our own consciousness to ourselves. Except, unlike waking life, in dreams, we are free of the laws of physics and oftentimes of much of the social conditioning that limits what we think we can experience. So awareness gets to play much more freely. That has attracted me to dreams, and also the beautiful kind of teaching that has come to me in dreams about the nature of reality and of my own consciousness. It's been really powerful. So I engage with dreams not to analyze them in service of my ego, but to enter into them in service of understanding something far beyond what I currently do.
But it's the language that you just used. I engage with the dreams.
Yeah.
How often and how many of us engage with dreams? I mean, we dream, all of us dream, right? Some of us
Right.
remember, some of us not. My kids sometimes, come to me and they will give me every detail of their dream. How
Mhm.
do you remember? Because the moment that sometimes they're really great and you're just like, oh, I don't want to wake up. And sometimes you wake up and like, I dreamt something. I thought there were a lot of colors and sometimes I hear sounds, but I don't remember. And you engage with them. And you said you've been doing it for 40 years. How did you, how did it start?
I've always been interested in, I have such a rich inner world that it's always been interesting to me. So my dreams are vivid, and I started relatively early in life, I think, to be lucid in all my dreams, meaning that I had awareness and the ability to witness my dreams as like a distinct watcher of them, and I could see really early on because spiritual practice has been so central to my life from the time I was a small child that I realized what I'm looking at is the workings of my own consciousness, my own awareness. And so I could engage with it just like I engaged with spiritual practice in a way that expanded my consciousness and awareness. And as I did that, dreams taught me. And as that happened, it was self-reinforcing. There were things that I could carry over in all of my ways of engaging awareness or consciousness or spirituality. And it's a reason that I would distinguish the way that I approach dreams from what we hear so often in culture, where culture will tell us, oh, you can analyze them and get some kind of help with your daily life. Or you even hear neuroscientists or sometimes people in the psychological world saying, oh, dreams is just our brain kind of taking out the trash. It hurts my heart, my heart, because I think that, like you say, many people don't remember their dreams. That just like any relationship, the amount of honor and respect that we bring to it is responded to in equal measure. So as we come to respect our dreams and to honor them with our attention and with our relationship, they give us more and more and more. If what happens the first thing when you wake up is the alarm goes off and you have to jump into action to get your kids out, if that's happening, you're unlikely to remember it. So if you have the presence of mind, as you awaken, just to quickly, like sometimes I'll just voice message, just say it in the middle of the night into my voice messages
Wow.
or something. Because if you wake up and get yourself into your rational, kind of conscious mind, it's gone because it's a completely different mind than the one that approaches dreams. I like to think about it this way. We have, or these are my terms for it. We have a mastery seeking mind. That's the conscious ego, the rational mind, our usual daily self that is driven by the desire to have mastery over what's going on, to get control of things and to prove to ourselves that we're worthy and we exist. And then we have a mystery seeking mind. And that's the aspect of our awareness that is attracted to the unknown, to what we are not in control of, and is willing to bring itself into participation with that. The mastery seeking mind will look at a dream as an object and say, how can I manipulate that in service of my own agenda? The mystery seeking mind will enter into it in relationship and allow itself to be transformed by that relationship. So we need both those capacities. We can't walk around engaging with mystery all the time. We have to also pay the bills and take the kids to school, but it's a partnership. That's how I think we remember dreams more when we bring ourselves into relationship with them with respect.
Interesting. I love the mastery versus mystery, or mastery working along the side of mystery, and how they cannot exist in vacuum. You mentioned something in passing, and that is the presence. So it's,
Mhm.
being in the presence. And this is something that you engage with quite actively in your work. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. You know, when I think about presence, what I mean is, I'll use I, but this applies to all of us. So when I say I am present, I don't just mean I showed up, and I don't just mean I'm paying attention to you. I mean that I have awareness open up in all the realms that I can access, so that what's available to this experience is not just my mind and my emotions and my ego, but all the way down to the collective realms of who and what we are, to the fundaments of my being, where I am connected to divinity and to all that is, so that I'm bringing more and more life available to all the experiences that I have. So we have differing degrees. Each of us has stabilized consciousness at different levels, some of us more than others. And the more stabilized, the more expanded consciousness is, the more that expanded consciousness is stabilized in our being, meaning it isn't lost just because we encountered something stressful or distracting. We're able to hold it and maintain it. The more we have that, the more of life, energy, and of consciousness we can bring to the experiences that we have. So the more resourced we are, and the more effective we are in everything that we do. And so when I say present to dreams, just like in waking life, what we experience and what we're able to perceive depends on the level of consciousness that is doing the perceiving. So if I'm a person who lives primarily in a very concrete world, thinking of myself as this separate physical being, I'm only going to see the surface level of a dream. If
Mm.
I'm a person who lives very captured by my psychological levels, by my thoughts and my emotions and what I think you're feeling, and then I'm going to see maybe this psychological processing that's available in a dream. That's also useful. That can happen. We can integrate material from the day that was left over. We can work through conflicts, that our conscious mind isn't quite able to get itself around. But if we have presence all the way down into the deepest, subtlest levels of ourselves, what I would say are noetic or spiritual levels, then we're bringing that kind of access to deep knowing and very refined perception. And we have greater, more expansive understanding of what's going on and more connection to resources and everything we do. So dreams operate at all the levels because dreams are our own consciousness. Nobody's here but me. Like it's my consciousness looking at itself, playing with itself, dancing with itself. So the degree, the depth and the range that I have in my consciousness determines the depth and range of what I can experience in dreams.
That's just fascinating. And I really want to tap into your world and how you feel, and how you mentioned that you're present on so many different levels. What did it take to be where you are right now, to be present in all these levels and engage with your dreams, but not just the dreams, the real world too? And again, I'll
Mhm.
go back to your own mastery versus mystery. I mean, what you said, when you don't tap into the inside and you just do, a
Mhm.
lot of us are doers, you just scratch the surface. So what did it take for you to go this deep? And obviously there was a lot of inner work, but was it a lot of studying? Was it a lot of reflection? Was it a lot of engagement with other people who go deep? What was it? What hasn't been for you?
A combination of things. I would say consciousness doesn't open up in the depths that it is open through my awareness purely by our work. I think that what we do when we do inner work and when we do spiritual practices, we cultivate a container. We make ourselves a worthy vessel. But part of what happens, like the degree to which consciousness opens in us, is also a matter of grace, I think. And I was blessed that very early in my life, I'm recess, first grade. I'm looking for four-leaf clovers out in the field and just minding my own business. And all of a sudden, my awareness just crashed open, I would say, and I was no longer centered behind my eyeballs in my little 6-year-old body. I was perceiving absolutely everything from everywhere as everything all at once. It was kind of like there was no form. I was just awareness of everything, and it was so benevolent and so blissful and so good, and everything looked like scintillating light to me. There weren't things. My awareness was open right then. I would say my vision was opened into this subtle field that is the substance that everything is, And in some ways, my little 6-year-old head, well, so I was experiencing all of that. And then the recess bell rang, and I was like back in my body with my little pigtails and skin knees, like my usual 6-year-old self.
Wow.
And I was just weeping. I was like, why is my face wet? I was weeping just because it was so blissful. And it changed absolutely everything, because then I knew, hey, wait a minute. I'm not this thing everybody's been telling me. People tell me like, oh, you're a girl and you belong to this family and you're good at math and you're terrible at singing. And, like all the feedback we get from the world that says this is who you are. And I realized none of that is who I am. As a matter of fact, it's not the limit of who I am. And as a matter of fact, what we see and believe in all around us is not the limit of what reality is. It's one very dense, superficial presentation of reality. So, and again, I'm 6 years old. I didn't know how to make sense of all of this. So it was actually even maybe a little bit traumatic. In fact, the year after that, I lost my vision. I had good enough vision to find four-leaf clovers before, and afterwards, I was almost legally blind. And I think it was just so overwhelming to see what I had seen and then try to make sense of it, as a kid in the world. I asked my Catholic priest that because I thought like maybe I've talked to God, maybe that's what it was. And at that time in the Catholic Church that I was raised in, this is pre-Vatican II, the story was only priests can talk to God and everybody talks to the priest. So I told my priest, I think I just communicated with God. And he was like, oh no, honey, like priests do that and girls can't be priests, but you could be a nun and marry Jesus. So I decided I'm never telling anybody that anymore. But anyway, that set the ball in motion because I knew I went through the whole process like everybody does of building an ego and an identity and excelling at school and trying to do this and succeeding here and failing there and, all the things, all the little ego bumps we do as we become people, humans. But I never forgot. And it caused that awareness, because that awareness never totally left me. It left its mark in me so that I could feel it all the time. And then over the course of my life, this is sort of like the map of the grace part. Over the course of my life, I would say the divine sought me, like in multiple times and multiple experiences like this. I was just stopped in my tracks. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't asking for it. Just boom, experiences that blew everything out of the water. But then simultaneously, the other thread of I realized all the false conceptions, all the fears, all the resentments, all the judgments I have, there's all kinds of things active in my psyche, all the lint that I picked up from being human over the course of developing an ego, all the stuff everybody has, I have too. So I realized, oh, I need to really deconstruct that. There's a whole inner work process of dismantling the false identity that I've picked up over the years and practicing being in contact with my true identity and with the truth of reality again and again. And so I practice that in absolutely every circumstance, and dreams are no different. So dreams is one example. So that's why I would never treat a dream like, oh, I'll get a dream dictionary and look it up and find out what, a giraffe means or something.
I will go through all the dictionaries. I'm like,
yeah, but those are all somebody else's.
And then, of course, I will stay with the interpretation that works for me.
Yeah. And that's fine. That'll get you a certain depth. But, another thing you can do, because, okay, here's the difference between a sign and a symbol. This is what I think about too. So both of them are things that represent something other than what they are. Like a sign, you can think of a stop sign. It's a red octagon. It doesn't have any inherent meaning, but we've all agreed a red octagon means stop. We all know it doesn't mean anything else. It only means stop when it's a sign, on the street. So we know a sign means one thing. It's obvious. We all agreed to it. Boom. That's like looking something up in a dictionary. Like, oh, okay, an owl means wisdom. We can do that. At one level, okay, that might be true. But a symbol is a living, eternally unfolding thing that invites us into deepening and deepening participation with it. And the deeper we go and the more we stay with it, the more it unfolds, more and more levels of meaning. So dream images, in my experience, are like that. So you might dream of an owl. And you look it up in the dictionary, it says owls mean wisdom. Maybe, I don't know, because I don't have a dream dictionary, but maybe that's what it would say. So you could look it up and be like, oh, owl means wisdom. And you can analyze it that way and put it in service of your mastery seeking mind, your ego that wants to have control over everything. Or you can give it to your mystery seeking mind and say yes to the invitation. And there's so many ways we can work then with a symbol to help us enter into its world. There's all kinds. You can use art, you can use embodiment, you can be in dialogue with it. And when you do that, you might find you dream about it again and again, and it keeps taking you deeper. So that's the mystery seeking mind will enter into relationship with this symbol and have it unfold more and more and more as we agree to enter this is the humility to enter the world of this symbol, which is our larger consciousness speaking to us. Or we can go look in a dictionary and say, oh, I know what that is. That's what I need to do. I need to apologize to my boyfriend or whatever the thing is. In some cases, that's good enough, but it's never been good enough for me. I like to go deeper.
How do we go deeper? So what's the practice? What was your practice and what worked for you? And where do we start if we want to go deeper? Not with the dictionary, apparently.
Not the dictionary, because it's somebody else's. In fairness, there are some dreaming images that are so ingrained in our collective consciousness as humans that they tend to mean similar things, lots of people. For example, water oftentimes means a lot of people experience that even as they unfold the symbol of it, to have it be representative of consciousness. So like an ocean might be the big collective consciousness, or a tsunami might be like being overwhelmed by emotions and feeling. A swimming pool is more private. My bathtub's even more private. That might be just like my. So cars, ways that we get around, or homes, our personas, some of these are so deeply ingrained in our collective consciousness because they're so common an experience of humanity that we can start there and see, if they unfold for us. But if it's something like, okay, here's an example. I had a dream maybe a year ago. It had more plot to it, but the main symbol of it was my own physical heart had a hole between the wall in the heart so that blood was going back and forth from the right and the left. I know what that particular cardiac defect is called because I used to work in a neonatal ICU. I could take that if I wanted to at a very concrete level, and I might walk away and say, oh, I wonder if I have a heart defect. Or I might take it at an emotional, psychological level. It's a little bit deeper and say, what does a heart represent to me? Maybe it represents my life force. Maybe it represents my emotional world. Who knows, whatever associations a heart might have for me. Or if I want to really enter into it deeply, I can just be with my heart. I can even say, let me just drop my awareness into my own heart and see what it feels like with openness and curiosity. What does it feel like? What does this symbol feel like? I might dialogue with it in a journal, and so I might ask a question and then just wait for an answer and see what comes in my mind and have a conversation back and forth between this symbol of the heart with a hole between right and left. I could, like a heart, this is less easy, but let's just say it was a more moving symbol, like an animal or something. I could allow my awareness to sort of be opened up in that kind of animal and see what it feels like in my body, or let my body move that way, or take a posture, a position. This is active imagination, like Carl Jung might teach. And so those are ways to just let myself open to some of the consciousness of those symbols. The dreaming ego is the least valuable bit of perspective in your dream. So the one that I think I am in the dream has the least information for me. The character in my dream, all of which are aspects of my own consciousness, that seems further away from me has more wisdom. It has a perspective that my conscious mind doesn't have. So I get especially interested in doing this kind of active imagination or dialogue or embodiment or whatever I do to take on the perspective with those characters that are further away. A couple of years ago, I had a really impactful dream on New Year's Eve. So when it happens on like a birthday or New Year's Eve or some date that carries an importance, I pay special attention to it. So I had a dream where I was two people. I was simultaneously a person who looked like me. I have white skin. And I was also a person that was also me who was Black. And these two, the white me and the Black me, entered a territory where everything was dark. And I won't go into all the details of it, but there were two aspects. Like there's a polarization of me, there's a light and a dark. We took a bus ride somewhere where the white me was like, we're lost, let's go back. And the Black me was just intrigued with moving deeper into the darkness. And in the darkness, we met this kind of like matrix surfing, like it was a guy on a surfboard, but he was surfing kind of like the matrix, that was just on scintillating light. And the Black me was super intrigued by this and was like, I've waited forever for this meeting. The white me was like trying to call an Uber, like, let's get out of here. So when I woke up from that dream, the invitation for me was not to explore the me that's like my normal me, my waking me, but to explore that darker me who's intrigued with mystery, and particularly to explore the matrix surfing. You felt like a guide, So I did a lot of kind of active imagination, embodiment, dialogue, all those processes with that guide being who is surfing the matrix. And that being continues to show up in my dreams every now and then. This was maybe 5 years ago. Every now and then, that same representation will show up in my dreams. And that's representing an aspect of me, I would say, that was awakening 5 years ago at that part, that was ringing my bell, bringing my attention to it. So if I had really spent a lot of time just trying to take the dream literally or interpret it from the perspective of the dreaming self who looks and feels a lot like me, I would have missed the wisdom. So I would say an important part of going deeper, at least with dreams, is to be curious about that which is most different from me, and to allow that consciousness to occupy my awareness with humility so that I can learn what I don't already know. That's kind of the point, right?
No, it's fascinating. I want to talk a little bit more about the sign and symbol, but also connect your interpretation of signs and symbols with the reality of the world. And you use that word, once, but I see it as signs. So sometimes when we're in a dark place or in a place of doubt or in a place of uncertainty, like for myself, I don't think I consciously look for symbols or signs, but I do see, like, I hadn't seen a yellow butterfly in 5 years. And now I see them several times a day. And so I looked up the yellow butterflies. Different cultures have different interpretations of it. But for me, all of them were positive and really interesting. And I interpreted it for my life. And like, okay, just have patience. There's light, there's hope. And for me, that was, again, the sign that the high universe or whatever has been sending to me. And oftentimes we look for signs. I know I do. What are they for you? How do you see that? And does it have a certain resonance with you when it comes to reality and the connection of reality? Again, the mastery and the mystery, connection of reality with the spiritual, to your vision.
Well, in the first place, there's value in the consciousness that we use to engage what meets us is the consciousness we have access to in that moment. And in different moments, we may have more or less access. If we're preoccupied and stressed and in a really mental place, we're not dropped down deep. And so we're going to make sense of things at that level. If we just came out of a meditation and we're feeling like wide open and really connected, we might make a different meaning. So it's really fluid like that. So I think there is value, like You gave the example, something's going on, maybe you have a question, maybe you don't, but there's something going on and suddenly your attention is grabbed by multiple yellow butterflies. So it's fine to start with, what does the book say a yellow butterfly is? And then, like you said, check with myself. What does it mean to me? Well, it felt like there's hope. The fact that there were many of them got your attention. If you just saw one yellow butterfly and yellow butterflies live by you, it wouldn't have gotten your attention or it wouldn't have been that important. But there's something that your consciousness was saying, look at that. If we want to go one step deeper than that, if we're available to it at the time, if we're not preoccupied with a lot of other things, one step deeper is, I'll use my own example because I don't know your yellow butterfly one. So just last week, I was walking on a little paved trail that goes through my suburban neighborhood with a friend, and all of a sudden, racing directly towards us on this trail was a coyote. This coyote came running directly towards us. We both stopped, like, what? What's happening? The coyote came running right towards us and brushed my
Wow.
calf as it went by. And it touched me as it went by. So it really got my attention. So I could take that as a sign, like, oh, what is a coyote? Maybe I have certain associations with coyotes or something. And a little bit deeper step of that, what I actually did with it in taking it as a symbol. So at the sign level, coyotes oftentimes are said to represent trickster energy. They might interact with us in ways like this one did, in ways that sort of get our attention or confuse us or present us with something that is a challenge, but it turns out it was a benefit, or, it's a trickster. So what is it that's challenging me right now? And what might it have? Like, what might it be opening up for me paradoxically? That's good. The most remarkable attention getting part of it, what for me was the sensation. I was wearing shorts, so I felt its fur. The
Hmm.
sensation of its fur on my leg as it touched me in passing. And so I just amplified. I kind of turned within and I amplified that sensation of the fur as it passed me. And I didn't know where that was going. It was just following the bird seed, like that stuck out to me. So I amplified that in my inner kind of imaginal realm. And I ended up kind of having the experience. What I felt like it wanted to do was that sensation to sort of spread over my being. So I felt like it was a shape-shifting thing. Like my awareness was trying on the experience of coyote and of wildness just running in suburbia. And as I kept taking that deeper and being in dialogue with it, more and more opened up in me about the experience of the wildness running in suburbia, one could say, but also the not belonging. Like this coyote was a little panicked because it was crossing big streets and it didn't really, this is not its home. And then I started to wonder, how did it get so far from home? Like, what is the story of this coyote? So I just let myself free associate and write a story of that coyote, which ended up having a lot of resonance for me personally. What is it doing in this place? This wild thing had a deeper resonance as I told the story and as I let myself drop deeper and deeper into the imagination of it. This will keep opening. If I want to keep paying attention to it, it'll keep opening endlessly. But there was a moment where I felt like, oh, that had nothing to do with a coyote, but that had everything to do with something going on in me that was ready for my attention that I hadn't been giving it. And that doorway opened my awareness into that thing that wanted my attention. That's an example of like we can take it, and there's plenty of value taking it as a sign at that level, or we can go deeper and let it show us something more individual, more specific to you.
So with that, in terms of going deeper and in terms of our other engagements and busy lives, I can speak for myself. I can lose myself in the daily routines
Mm.
where I can find the time to stop and reflect and think about what the yellow butterfly means, or the coyote for yourself. Especially in this, I wrote a post about it the other day and I'm doing a newsletter on it, and that is the noise, all the noise that we hear that surround us, all the loudness. How do you turn it down? How do you focus on the things that matter and go deeper? And what would you recommend for the people who are seeking the depth but are finding it very hard to quiet the noise and the loudness?
That's such a good question. I think you speak for a lot of people when you ask that. And I just feel like it touches me because I know there's great pain in the kind of isolation or alienation that people feel from their own depths. So I'm feeling that. The good news, we all have right in the center of our own being a bottomless well of life-giving, life affirming, everything you could ever need, depth of meaning and beauty and peace, unshakable peace. And it is closer than our own breath. It's closer than our own heart. It is the substance of the center of our being. So the good news is it's right there. We don't have to go anywhere to get it. So what's helpful, I think, are a couple of things. People have different kinds of lives, especially if there's children in the house. Our lives can feel like they're commanded from the outside, but we always have the reins of our own attention. So I think if we can find that quiet center, that sort of well of unshakable peace, if we find it even once, and it can be helpful to have someone who lives from that place be in our presence, keeping company with people who access that regularly uplifts us and kind of gives our energy systems a template, a sort of direction. We can find it more easily in the presence of someone who lives from there. So if we can find that in our environment or in the people around us, it can help us find that center in ourselves. And then when we do, our awareness loves that unshakable peace and that still center. If we can find it once, if I'm kind of trying to work on something at my computer and then somebody in the other room is playing my favorite song, my attention is going to go to my favorite song because I really like that song. So it's the same thing. When our attention has once tasted the unshakable peace in that quiet center, it wants to go back. It wants nothing more than to go back there. So if we can have that taste and then amplify it by being in the presence and company of those who live from there, and then help ourselves make that pathway easier to find through practices like, for me, meditation is an important part of my practice, and I practice meditation twice a day. Not long, like 20 minutes each time. It doesn't have to be an hour. So for me, that works really well. If there's some practice that just gives you a taste of that silence a couple times a day or whenever you think about it, we can be standing in line somewhere or washing the dishes and just take that moment to drop into the silence in between our breaths. Even as I'm speaking to you, I can feel the silence in between each word. It's always there. When we can find it and then amplify it and then reinforce it with the people around us, the pathways get made and our attention will more and more easily go there. So that's the first step, I think. That's one part of the paradox is we drop into it more often because we have the capacity no matter what kind of noise is happening in our world. No one is in charge of my attention. Only I put it where it goes. So we can do that. And then the other side of it, I was talking about there's grace and then there's also practice. You know, the grace is like what happens when we turn our attention there. It's all there for us. The practice is making ourselves and our lives a worthy container or a vessel for that. And so that's the inner work of, we need to integrate experiences that were really big for us, like traumas that maybe are still unintegrated. We need to bring awareness to the things we've been suppressing. We need to reconcile relationships that are troubled. We do all that psychological and inner work in order to create a vessel that has the capacity to hold our attention where it loves to be. If we don't have that capacity, then just kind of anywhere there's unawareness, we'll kind of tend to get captured by. That's where we feel like we don't have the reins of our own attention because we'll feel captured by thoughts and feelings and reactions. So that's the part of it that is practice.
I like your example. And you said 20 minutes twice a day. And I'm like, oh, I don't have this kind of time for meditation. And I don't have this kind of patience. But then you said practice. So with practice, and sometimes it starts, I remember I'd never meditated in my life. And my first experience with meditation was a 1 minute grounding meditation that I did in one of the trainings on efficiency, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a guided meditation where the trainer, she just walked us through our body.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so amazingly eye-opening to me because I had never done it before. And the moment I did it and I went fully in, it was 1 minute. I felt so incredibly present, but I was also in a sense of awe that I lived at that point, I don't know, 35 years of my life, never experiencing that. And
Yeah.
there was this 1 minute where you focus on your breath and what you're experiencing on your body. And I think that that's the first time where I like, oh, meditation, that's what they mean. Like you said, the practices, your example was a brilliant one, the practices that work for you. So for people who don't have the patience for meditation, if they practice just a little bit, 1 minute at a time, 2 minutes at a time, 3 minutes, and then allow their thoughts to be present, or when they're washing the dishes, find in the moment of silence. So it's in the routines of our lives, in the pace that a lot of us are experiencing, just finding that space. I think is just beautiful advice, working with what you have, but trying
Yes.
to honor the vessel that we are.
Absolutely. And each of us has a slightly different vessel, you know? So what works for me won't necessarily work for everyone, but it can be as simple. I love that you use the word awe because I think that awe and wonder, however, wherever you feel that, if it's looking at the ocean or just walking quietly by a stream or looking at a work of art in a museum, whatever, like awe and wonder are a great doorway into that. I watch people in the groups that I lead in classes and things like that, where I'll guide people because that's relatively easy access for me. So I'll guide people in, you know what, at the surface we call them meditations or something, but really what it is my energy system is offering a template or a blueprint that other people's energy systems will, it's kind of like it shows them the pattern. Entrainment is one way that energy systems work together. So if one energy system is holding a high quality, orderly, coherent field, another one will entrain to it. And that's like that energy system learns like, oh, that's how you organize yourself. That's how I. And so then in as I'm bringing energy through, because energy and consciousness are two sides of the same thing, as I'm bringing energy through, other people will feel their system shift. And this can be true with anybody who's holding a more coherent kind of field than you are. But I've had people say to me, you know, brilliant, wise, very functional humans leading in all kinds of situations say to me, you know, I'm 40 something years old, and this is the first time I have directly experienced my own inherent goodness, like how the truth of who and what I really am weeping. You know, people have powerful experiences just in a few minutes like that. So I think, yeah, the practice that works in your life, whatever it is that can reorient you to silence again and again and again, the more we can hold that experience. Giving yourself the leg up and support of people around you who can hold that because it'll lift your field, and doing the inner work to integrate what hasn't yet been integrated so that we're not so reactive. Our attention doesn't get so captured by things, makes it more possible for us to hold that kind of unshakable peace that then allows the dropping into deeper and deeper realms where profound wisdom emerges.
Thank you for sharing this. And thank you for, because I was trying to think back to your mentioning of your experience when you were 6, and then that changed your life profoundly. And then I was going to tie it in, but tell me if it's tied with the dream that you mentioned that you had 5 years ago, but also that experience probably leading you towards different experiences in your life and going deeper into your inner world. But it sounds, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you did experience a sense of awe when you were 6,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
and that left a mark that you've been searching for. And then again, what I heard in your dream, and that was fascinating just 5 years ago, but I heard there was a connection between your 6-year-old and that sense of everything, and
Mm-hmm.
tapping into your dream world 5 years ago where you see the two different sides of you, and we have the multifaceted sides, but exploration of the mystical, exploration of the dark, exploration of the unknown versus the uber. I love
That, and the self of me that was trying madly to call the Uber, I just kept getting that little spinning thing, like waiting, waiting.
that.
I would say not only that there's a connection between the 6-year-old experience and the dream from 5 or 6 years ago, but all things. It's an entire trajectory of the 6-year-old dream was an initiation. It set the course of my life because I was not old enough. I didn't have the maturity or the wherewithal to kind of make sense of that. But what it did was, it was like a Zen koan, a riddle you just live with. You don't find the answer, but you live with it. Because what it brought up for me was the question, everyone's telling me that I am this thing and I feel like this thing, this body, this mind. And yet I've had this direct experience of being so much more. How is it possible? Like, what do these things have to do with each other? In my childhood, I just wanted to be normal. I was like, I just want to be like everyone else, like I didn't know anybody who had experiences like that. Now I do know a lot of people have experiences like that, but I didn't at the time. I knew at 6, in this lifetime, I am going to understand how all of that lives through this individual thing that I am. That's the individual self as an instrument of the greater reality, of the larger, vaster spiritual reality of what we all are, of what life is, what everything is. And so that was the course that it set me on. And there were periods in my life where I was on the side of, I just want to be normal. Like when I was in high school and I'm just trying to like do the high school, I wasn't going deep in all this, but it still sought me out. I had again and again and again these profound experiences, life-shaking experiences that I didn't know anybody who was having those. It was happening again and again, like it was not going to let me rest. And I really believe that at a soul level, my intention was so strong that that's what would happen in this life, that I hit the planet with a bang, had that early experience. The higher, vaster regions of my own being were offering experiences to me that kept me going on that path. And then as I grew older and had some maturity and had some spiritual teachers and met a lot of people, all of that came together, then it became a more conscious intention, but it felt very personal to me. Like, this is just my secret private intention. A little before the pandemic, and then definitely when the pandemic hit, people started seeking me out because they saw something in me and because people were frightened, in 2020. And so people were seeking me out and saying, help us help us find that unshakable peace. And would you bring us together so that, in community, we can experience something? People who had no orientation to spirituality, or people who had no interest in it whatsoever, leaders that I coached who were, coming from very scientific kind of orientations. Everybody was so shaken by the pandemic. And this is the way our evolution happens sometimes. The most shaking experiences are the most powerful catalysts. And so people came, and it really started to shift the way that I was working and what I do in my work. Now it's more and more overt that this is what I'm assisting, and that what I really love, what I'm in service of in terms of the work I do, is creating more and more in the fabric of humanity, creating more and more points of stability, individuals who can hold a stable, high consciousness perspective that radiates and transmits truth all through the fabric of who and what we are, that lifts the whole thing up. Some people are really ready to do that, and others are working at different levels. But this is what I really hope for, that to the degree that any one of us is able to, that we can expand our capacity for running higher and higher consciousness through our beings, so that we unfold that mystery, and so that we open up into the fullness of that vastness of who and what we are, embodied in the specificity of our unique individual expressions.